What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. Have a really fun episode for you this week because we're still coming off the bye. Lots to digest for the Patriots, lots to digest for those of us covering the Patriots. And to help us digest it all, we're bringing in Matt Cassel. But before we do that, I wanted to share a quick exchange I had with Bill Belichick. Again, coming out of the bye, I'm curious. I think a lot of us are curious that follow this team, media, fans, or otherwise. What can they do to change offensively? Because what they've been doing defensively is great. It's been carrying them to a degree, but it's probably not enough, as Dante Scarnecchia had told us last week, to be able to get them where they want to go in terms of making a real run into the playoffs and having a chance to extend their season deep into January. Right now, they are 28th in football when it comes to turning first downs into a fresh set of downs or a touchdown. That's according to Ben Baldwin of The Athletic. They're 25th, the Patriots are, in expected points added per play. So they're near the bottom of the league in terms of offensive efficiency. They have arguably the toughest schedule moving forward in the second half of the NFL season here. ESPN's Football Power Index, their FPI, says they do have the number one toughest schedule through the next 8 games. So what can they do offensively to change? Are they limited in terms of only being able to dive into what they used or what they implemented during training camp? That's what I asked Bill Belichick. Here's our back and forth.
Bill, coming in the bye week, is it realistic to make substantial changes to what you guys are doing from a schematic standpoint, or do you have what you have basically going back to the things you worked on in training camp?
Yeah, I mean, there's no laws or regulations. You can do whatever you want to do.
But realistically, is it asking too much?
Depends on what you want to do. I don't know. I think it would depend on what you consider major and what you don't consider major. You know, I don't know. Yeah, each team's different. Players are different. Systems are different. What works for one might not work for another, vice versa. It's like anything else. You take the time you have and try to use it as productively as possible. I'm sure that's what you do in your life. That's what we all try to do in our lives. That's what your team tries to do. Take the time, figure it out, see what the problems are, address them. Got to make a big change, make a big change.
No laws or regulations against major change. He's right, of course. Right? There's no football police that's going to pull up alongside the Patriots if they decide to change something in their offense and say, "Excuse me, sir, could you pull over, please? I saw you try to run that RPO back there." Obviously, you can't do that. So, no, that's not going to happen. But how significantly can they change even after his explanation? I'm still wondering. We do know that at least Bill Belichick is open to change. This is something we've talked about really all season this season, and it started when they were talking about and very open about the fact that they were running a lot more zone runs inside and outside zone during training camp, and it didn't go well. And we talked about it at the time. Bill Belichick won't be afraid to pivot if he feels like they have to pivot in order to be a more successful football team. That thought to me really was crystallized by some sound we got from Josh McDaniels during the Do Your Job special, part 3 of the Do Your Job special. Obviously, the Patriots beating the Rams in Super Bowl 53. They come out with this great end of season DVD with all sorts of behind the scenes sound and clips and interviews. And here's a bite from Josh McDaniels in the interview he did for that special, talking about the changes they made at the end of that season when they really shifted to become more of a 2-back offense, a blue collar running game, a punch in the mouth identity kind of team. And that change, McDaniels said, was kickstarted by a conversation that he had with Bill Belichick that he shares here.
One of the things that I'm so thoroughly impressed with Bill on is his ability to adapt and evolve. He said, if you keep holding on to what you'd rather be, no huddle, spread formations, 34 points a game, then you're probably going to end up regretting a lot of things at the end of the year. What are we really good at? What's the most consistent part of our team offensively? And then you commit to it.
What are we really good at? What's the most consistent part of our team offensively? Then you commit to it, McDaniel says. Well, how do we apply that to this year? What do we know the Patriots are good at? What's the most consistent part of their offense? Well, during the bye week, I had some time to dive into the numbers, as obviously the Patriots did as well, and to a much greater extent than yours truly. But I was able to dig up a couple of different things that the Patriots might end up turning to in the second half to jumpstart their offense. Number one, shift away from the zone runs that they really focused hard on implementing over the summer and become more of a gap running team. Number two, run less on first down, throw more. I understand that they may not trust their passing game all that much at the moment, but they've shown that they can be a relatively efficient passing offense when they throw on first down, when they're a little less predictable. Adjustment number three could be to embrace what the college game has brought to the NFL. RPOs, the Patriots are near the bottom of the league in terms of RPO attempts, according to Pro Football Reference. Mac Jones ranks 33rd in that category this year, despite the fact that some of the best offenses, some of the best quarterbacks in today's NFL are frequent users of RPOs. How about the no huddle, another college element that the Patriots have shown they're willing to use? They're right in the middle of the pack in terms of the number of attempts they have coming out of the no huddle. And again, they're pretty damn efficient throwing the football when working out of those no huddle sets. So a three-pronged plan. We're going to present it to our guy, Matt Cassel, right now. See what he thinks. Here's Matt. There's our guy, that handsome devil, Matt Cassel. Matt, the first thing I want to ask you, sir, is, in your experience, what was the most drastic in-season change you ever experienced as a member of a given offense? And did that drastic change come during the bye week? I think there are a lot of people that are watching this Patriots team right now. They're saying they're coming off the bye. They have a chance now to totally shift gears and be a different team in the second half. Is that realistic based on your experience? I'd love to hear about a crazy change that an offense made mid-season that you were a part of, if there is one.
Well, I mean, it's really also the confidence of the team. I remember when I was in Kansas City in 2011, we got off to an 0-3 start and we were struggling. And really, it was against San Diego. We were getting drummed in the first half, down by a bunch of scores, and we came back and we tied the ball game in the second half, and that gave us confidence. And then all of a sudden, we went on a 4 or 5 game win streak. Now, there's things that happened during that time that we learned about ourselves. We had some injuries. We sustained some injuries to Jamal Charles, to Eric Berry, some of our key components, both offensively and defensively. So we had to re-identify with who we were and what we need to get better at. And so we were able to make that change mid-season. That was probably the most dramatic that I've been a part of going from an 0-3 start, looking miserable on offense, not being able to figure it out, turning over the ball, and then making a more conscious effort of taking care of the football, getting back to certain run game and concepts that we were familiar with. And then we went on a 4-game run. And again, a lot of this comes with the confidence. In terms of the bye week, you can make a lot of adjustments during the bye week through self-evaluation. But at the same time, if you're expecting them to come in and run a whole new offensive scheme and do things that you've never seen them do, I wouldn't anticipate that. There's too little time in the bye week. You get usually 1 or 2 practices leading up to the time off that you have from a recovery standpoint, both mentally, physically. Then you start the next week in the game plan. So there should be a lot of wrinkles. There should be maybe some different concepts that they want to incorporate into the offense that they've been maybe working on the past few weeks. However, at the end of the day, you're still going to see the core type of runs, the core type of plays that are part of this offense, because that much of a dramatic change is not, honestly, it's not something that they can do in this short period of time.
Yeah, that was a question that I asked Bill Belichick during a press conference this week. We played the sound off the top of the podcast, but I said, how significant of change can your offense undergo over the course of 1 week off? Right. And, I said, are you really limited to the things that you worked on in training camp? And he said, well, there's no laws or regulations against it, which was like, okay, yeah, we get that. We understand, like, if you really want to drastically change, you can, but how realistic is that? I think, based on what we heard last week from Dante Scarnecchia, what we hear from you now, it's not like they're going to come out and they're all of a sudden going to be a completely different offense, but it does sound like maybe they can take some of the things they've done and either use them more, use them less, just sort of shift the sliders. Remember the sliders in video games where you could make a player like 100 strength or 100 speed or whatever. Like,
that's exactly right.
And it's, and imagine those sliders being related to football concepts. Maybe you just adjust the sliders a little bit during the bye week. Does that sound fair?
That sounds absolutely fair. And again, it's going up against the opponent that you're playing too, right? So you're not going to go so far outside the box where you're putting in all these new plays and concepts. You've got to match it up to what the defensive side is going to do against you offensively. So it's going to be schematically from that standpoint, it's going to be game plan plays, but there are wrinkles and different things that you can create within that offense that doesn't take too much time on task in terms of repetition that you can achieve and get done, give different looks, and maybe have some new bullets in the barrel, so to speak.
I love that. I love that. All right, so here's where I run by you my 3-point plan to maybe
Yes, I love point plans.
Just a few adjustments to the Patriots.
Just run it down,
offense,
baby.
based on some numbers that I was able to pull from a variety of different sources. Okay, we dipped into the Sports Info Solutions site this week, which is really interesting. They get in depth with types of runs, formations, personnel. I am enjoying exploring that site right now, but Pro Football Focus, Pro Football Reference. Anyway, let me throw some numbers at you along with some suggestions. You tell me what you think. My suggestion number 1, shift away from the zone runs more than I think they already have a little bit and get back to being a gap heavy run team. Because right now, according to Sports Info Solutions, they average 3.5 yards per zone run. That's 27th in the league, and that includes inside and outside zone. They also are among the league leaders in getting zone runs stuffed. So hit at or behind the line of scrimmage. They're 3rd worst in the league when they run zone runs. Okay, but when they run gap runs, Matt, 6.1 yards per carry, and only 9.6% of those gap run plays get hit at or behind the line of scrimmage. That's 27th. So, top 10 in the league in that category. So is that something that they can execute moving forward second half? Just become more of a gap running team as opposed to the zone stuff, which they really wanted to do over the course of this past summer.
Right. Absolutely. It's something that they would probably, and that's what I'm talking about in the bye week. You can evaluate that and you can look at these numbers and say it is a significant difference when we're running zones. We're not having a lot of success for whatever reason. We're not able to cut off the backside guy. We're not able to get up to the second level. Maybe they're just not athletic enough up front to make the zone work, because the zone, look, those guys are moving horizontally, right? And it's hard. And then you've got to have a back that understands when to make the cut and do those things. Other backs are really a lot better by following somebody into the hole. So when you talk about gap, when you talk about power, single back, 2-back, that running back is following somebody into a hole, making his cut off of that guy. So sometimes running backs, I had a guy like Adrian Peterson, for instance, he wasn't a very good zone reader. He didn't like to run horizontally and then have to make a decision cut. But what he did do really well is you put a fullback in front of him, whether it was lead, whether it was power, and he'd follow him in the hole, make his cut off of that guy's block, and now he hits the hole. So that's something that they should look at and say, absolutely, if we're getting 6.1 yards a carry per gap, whether it's power and which side you're going to, I would major in it without a doubt.
What's really interesting is, according to Pro Football Focus, this year, gap runs across the league-wide, all teams, gap runs have averaged more yards per carry than zone runs have. So I don't know if that's just the league adjusting to all of these zone runs that they're now seeing with all the Shanahan-style offenses being sprinkled across the league. Defenses, I think, have adjusted. They've gotten these players that can move side to side, that can kind of mirror what's happening on the offensive side of the ball. And it's gotten harder to execute those kinds of runs because I think defenses see them so much, and the personnel that they have are prepared to play those types of plays.
Right, and I think you hit it right on, because when you look at the linebackers in today's game and the speed, they're not necessarily those old school linebackers that are big, bulky guys that come down. Rather, they're made for speed. They can play sideline to sideline. They can go run past your block. So as hard as it is to work a double team up to get to the second level, those guys are past that landmark that they're shooting for to get on to that defender and get hat on hat. So that's part of the athleticism at the linebacker in today's game, and also the athleticism of that defensive line. And so when you look at it in terms of the gap scheme, they can't use their speed as much running horizontally because they've got to come downhill and meet blocks head on. You're able to create double teams, get angles, come downhill, get a guy in the hole on maybe a smaller linebacker, and that's what pops that run. So you're right on with your assessment in terms of zone and why maybe teams aren't having as much success versus power And that's exactly why you call gap schemes and power schemes, because guess what? You make those teams come downhill and you make that linebacker fill. And if you can get a hat on a hat with a linebacker, with an offensive guard or a fullback and somebody like that, a lot of times that's the way to go against teams that can run.
All right. Point number 2 for my
Number 2.
3-point plan. Throw more on first down.
Mhm.
They are 22nd in the league in yards per carry on first down. I think, Matt, they seem a little bit predictable. They like to run the ball on first down. They're trying to stay ahead of the chains that way. I understand it. But the reason why I think the numbers kind of bear out the fact that they're predictable is on first down runs, 48.6% of those get stuffed. They get hit at or behind the line of scrimmage. Almost half of their first down runs, the opponent, in my opinion, based on some of these numbers, is saying, we know you're going to run, and as long as we hit the right hole, we're going to get you right at the line 50% of the time, essentially.
Right.
On first down throws, though, their yards per attempt, 7.5 is right in the middle of the league. That actually would be kind of an upgrade for them if they became a middle of the league passing game.
Right.
Their sack percentage is down on first down. Their pressure percentage is down on first down. I think if they became a little less predictable and threw more on first down, you might see an overall improvement in the offense. Does that sound fair to you?
That sounds fair. Every time you're playing offensive football, you're trying to look for balance and at the same time change up tendencies. And if you're a run first mentality, and we were a lot of times when I was in Kansas City with Jamal Charles, look, we were trying to stay ahead of down and distance, and we'd get the big runs every now and then. But if you're running consistently, look, defenses right now going up against the New England Patriots, they look at this run game and they say, we've got to stop the run game first. Let's make them beat us with the pass, which they haven't shown a ton of consistency and explosiveness in the pass game. But that's the counterpunch to that is going out, like you said, and mixing up your tendencies, going and dropping back on first and second down, throwing quick game, even taking a shot and first and second down. What do you have to lose, especially considering those statistics right there where they're not having a ton of success running the ball anyway and still in 2nd and 10 situations based on a negative run?
Yeah, they're 29th in the NFL in first down dropbacks. So it just feels low. If you don't have to be first in the league in throwing on first down. And I understand it, even if you've got a little bit of doubt in your passing game based on the results, right? And based on the number of interceptions that they'd thrown through 9 weeks. But I think putting the ball in Mac Jones's hands on early downs might actually help him out a little bit, maybe help build his confidence a little bit more. And then this last thing is something I'm curious to know how you feel about it, especially your experience with Bill Belichick and just kind of the style of play that he likes, even if he is sort of amorphous in his desires in terms of how to execute offensively or defensively. He'll always say, well, we're going to do what's best for the team. But my last point number 3 is don't be afraid to go the college route. And what I mean when I say that is don't be afraid to continue to saddle Mac Jones with more RPO plays, more RPO opportunities, and maybe even diversify those RPO opportunities. We talked about RPOs a couple weeks ago on this podcast, a lot of bubble screens, right? Maybe they can shake that up, do a little bit more, mix in a slant, mix in a glance route, try to figure something out to keep teams off balance when they're running their RPOs. And then the other part of the college point in my plan is go ahead and do a little bit more no huddle. They're 7th in yards per no huddle attempt this year. They're over 8 yards per attempt when they go with the no huddle. And they haven't been sacked in 35 no huddle attempts, which is pretty damn good. They're one of only 5 teams with that many no huddle attempts that hasn't been sacked. And we know protection has been a problem at times. So maybe you can help your offensive line out. Maybe you can help Mac Jones out by speeding things up a little bit. I'm giving you the offensive coordinator hat. Does that sound like a good plan to you?
No, I love the no huddle approach, and I love the change of tempo. And you saw it when they've been successful at different times in the season. They changed the no huddle. What does that do for the defensive side of the ball? Well, they have less time to communicate. They got to get on the line of scrimmage, and a lot of times it'll simplify them from a schematic standpoint. They won't be able to show as much disguise in the secondary. They can't dial up their blitzes like they would if you're huddling. And also, guess what else it does? It tires out those defensive linemen. And so going no huddle at times and changing that tempo, I like that mentality. But again, you have to understand that that's situationally based. If you have a lead in the fourth quarter or in the third quarter, a two score lead, then you don't want to get in no huddle and give them more opportunities for the offense. You want to try to possess the ball, take as much time off the clock. So you have to be situationally aware, but at the same time, that change of tempo a lot of times can spark something for the offense, especially in the pass game, because again, you tire out those defensive linemen. It's a lot more simplistic in terms of what you're looking at and how they're trying to disguise and everything. They line up, you can get a clear pre-snap read. So I really like that mentality. And the RPO game, look, it's got to be something that the offensive line, the quarterback's obviously comfortable with it because he did it in college, and then also getting everybody else on the same page in terms of the ball handling with the running backs. You've got to secure that ball handling because we've seen it throughout the course of this year. Sometimes there's times where that running back and quarterback are not exactly on the same page, and it creates a fumble. But at the same time, if you can get up to speed in RPOs, it's one of the easiest reads for the quarterback. We talked about that the last time I was on your podcast in terms of you're reading one defender or you're actually reading his depth, his width, and if that guy over pursues or overcommits to the run, you throw that ball and it's an easy read. It's a 1 to 2 man read. Otherwise, you're handing off the ball and you're living for the next play. So I like that because it's simplistic. It gets quarterbacks in rhythm, and at the same time, it's super easy and it doesn't take a lot of thinking for the quarterback position.
Matt Cassel, we've done it. We have done
We've
it, my
done
friend.
it, babe.
I believe we've fixed the Patriots offense. It didn't even take us a full bye week. We just got it done in a 15-minute conversation. So how about that? Pretty impressive, I would say. I may be biased, but I think it was pretty impressive what we just did.
You know, it's pretty impressive. You might be on track to be the next Ernie Adams. So,
well, no, hey, listen. I just run these ideas by you. As long as you sign off on them, then you're the one driving the bus here. You've got.
I love every 3 points. I mean, I loved every 3 points that you gave right there. I think all of those things can help this offensive unit become more explosive, score more points, be more productive and efficient. Oh, it's going to be the best, Philly.
That's terrifying what you just did right there. Okay, so we'll just publish the podcast and then you could forward it, I don't know, straight away to Bill or to Matt Patricia himself, and maybe it turns around their season.
Sure. We'll just get that done today. It's Thursday, so they can incorporate it by tomorrow and we'll be good to go.
Plenty of time.
Matt,
thank you so much for being with us, my friend.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.
Love having Cassel on the pod. Love when he comes on the pod and he doesn't necessarily dump all over the things that I think we may see from the Patriots in the second half of the year here. So that's an added benefit. I wanted to get to a few comments, a few questions, mailbag style, be very quick. We have a bunch of 5-star reviews that I wanted to mention here. Really, truly appreciative. A couple questions mixed into those 5 stars. We need the 5 stars. We want the 5 stars. We live off the 5-star reviews. So if you haven't already, please go throw one of those our way. We will be eternally grateful because it helps make this pod as good as it could possibly be. First one is from Radso. Says Tyquan Lamb. Think Tyquan Thornton puts on 10 pounds of muscle, he'd be a CD Lamb comp. First thing I thought looking at the height, weight, and speed until I saw the weight. I love that comp. And if the Patriots ended up getting CD Lamb from Tyquan Thornton, boy, they'd be cooking with gas. Can he do that? Can he get there? I think he has the ability to be used in a way similar to CD Lamb. The reason I say that is because he's much more than just a down the field threat. He's much more than just a 4-2 burner who's going to run by you along the sideline. He has some good quickness, which we've seen. We've seen him compete for the football. I think he's tougher than his size would suggest. So I love that comp. And again, I'm sure the Patriots would too if it ended up being a realistic comp for what Tyquan Thornton becomes. Chip from CT throws us a 5-star review as well. He says, why did they change the O-line blocking calls? Maybe after 20 years, opponents have figured it out. Maybe an opportune time to change. I think part of it was probably with new players in mind. Just as all the language changes that were made to the offense, I think, were to make things simpler on the players, on the coaches. There's a lot of turnover in today's NFL. In 2022, it's a lot different league than it was when Charlie Weiss was here in New England and he and Tom Brady and later Josh McDaniels were developing and growing this offense to what it became. So I think it was just simply with simplicity in mind. Not necessarily sure it had to do with other defenses, being able to sniff out those calls and really be able to take advantage of the Patriots in that way. The one time I can remember that happening, and I think it's an apt conversation for us to have, especially given some of the play tipping conversations that we've had of late after these games against the Colts and the Jets. The one time I can remember the offensive line believing, based on a couple conversations that I had, that the other team might have had their line calls and their protection calls was when they played at Tennessee. I believe it was 2018. Dion Lewis was on the other side. There were a couple Patriots connected people on that Tennessee team, obviously on the staff with Mike Vrabel, John Robinson in the front office. But there was some feeling that the Titans had a pretty good jump on what the Patriots were doing that day. Game was in Tennessee. They ended up getting shellacked in that game. Obviously, the Patriots ended up bouncing back, finishing with the Super Bowl that year. But that's the one time I could really remember that. I don't think that was the impetus for the change this offseason. Tramp Drum gives us a 5-star review, one of my favorite podcasts. We appreciate you, Tramp Drum. The Boston Advisor, another 5-star review, says this is the best Pats podcast. We appreciate you, Boston Advisor. Evan NFL says hands down the best draft podcast I've ever heard. Evan, my guy. Thank you, sir. Dave 24. Dave. Love it. He says, I don't have Twitter, but this is how I'm going to send in my mailbag question. He says, why is Miles Bryant still getting meaningful snaps on this football team? This was sent a few weeks ago. To me, Miles Bryant hasn't been bad these last few weeks. We actually drew up a play where he helped snuff out a third down in the red zone. We did it on the breakdown, Ted Johnson and I on the whiteboard, talking about the communication that the Patriots have in the secondary right now. It is really remarkable what they're able to do because all of these guys can play so many different positions. On that play in particular, Jonathan Jones follows Braxton Berrios in motion across the formation. Looks like man-to-man defense. Berrios ends up winding backward, doing sort of an orbit motion all the way back to the side of the field that he originally started on. Instead of Jonathan Jones tracing him all the way back, he just passes it off to Miles Bryant. Miles Bryant is right on top of it. Bryant started out as the free safety on that play, not Devin McCourty. So he's already playing a little bit, quote unquote, out of position, but he's not because he understands what's going on at a lot of different positions on the field. But he bumps from free safety down to slot corner to take Braxton Berrios. He's got great leverage on Berrios despite the motion. And Jonathan Jones, all he has to do, because again, he can play a variety of positions too, he bumps from slot corner up to free safety and they're covered. The ability to do that with a variety of different pieces, Miles Bryant, John Jones, Devin McCourty, Adrian Phillips, Kyle Duggar. The fact that all these guys are relatively interchangeable, of course, some of them have very different skill sets. Miles Bryant and Kyle Duggar, physically not nearly the same player, but you can ask them to handle similar roles. And their ability to do that while also generating pressure on the quarterback, a lot of times with just 4 rushers, that to me is what has made them such a great defense this year. Of course, they've gotten some great game-changing plays on the outside. You know, Jalen Mills has gotten his hands on the football quite a bit lately. Obviously, Jack Jones early in the year and continues to be very good, but early in the year, it felt like he was making a play every game, getting his hands on the football. Those plays help, but just the ability to be sound and to force quarterbacks to hold on to the ball a little bit longer because they have all of this football IQ on the back end, that to me has helped make them who they are defensively this year. Valhalla 33 also leaves us a 5-star review. We appreciate you, Valhalla. And then our friend KPC Cool leaves us a 5-star as well. Really appreciate it, KPC, and appreciate all the reviews there. Guys, this episode has been a blast. If you asked a mailbag question on Twitter this week, that is posted now. It's on NBCSportsBoston.com. We got to a ton of questions there. You can also read more about the 3-pronged plan that I think the Patriots may take in the second half to improve their offense. That is with much more detail up on NBCSportsBoston.com as well. There's a piece that I just wrote about the timing in the Patriots passing game. We had a chance to talk to Mac Jones about some of the things that he tried to improve during the bye week. He mentioned his feet and his eyes and making sure that those are always in the right place. I thought it was really fascinating to hear Mac Jones say what he said on the same day that our friend of the podcast, Dan Orlovsky, said on NFL Live on ESPN that there are real issues timing-wise with the Patriots passing game, that the routes and the design of the routes don't appear to be syncing up or don't appear to be married up with the footwork that Mac Jones is exhibiting in the pocket. So is that on the quarterback? Is that on the design of the offense and Matt Patricia and Joe Judge and Bill Belichick and whoever's putting those plays together? That we don't know because we're not behind the scenes. We're not inside the walls of One Patriot Place when these discussions are happening. But there is clearly something off there in the passing game. Maybe the Patriots use their time during the bye week to be able to clean that up. But we wrote about that on the website as well. So once you're done listening to this pod, once you're done listening to the Tom Curran's Patriots Talk pod this week, where he has JT the Brick on to talk about what's going on in Vegas, I'm on there to talk about what we might see from the Patriots in the second half. Head on over to the website, read all our stuff, and we'll talk to you next week on Next Bets.